Yeah. What you know about it? You gonna be all right on tonight. Welcome to Therapy Tuesdays. I hope you got your pen. I hope you got your paper. Matter of fact, right now, like it, share it, send it to somebody, because you're gonna be all right. Today we're talking about a heavy topic. Addictions. Guess what? Yep, I'm the past. I done been addicted too. Some of us have had addictions we didn't even know about. So today we're gonna break it down. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna explain it. We're gonna uncover it. We're going to go and dissect this thing. You know, the Bible actually talks about addiction if you didn't know it. Yes, it does. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But welcome to Love and Faith Restoration Church International Therapy Tuesdays. I'm the pastor, A.R. Garrison. And tonight we have somebody that's not a stranger. This is home. You know, this is her home, away from home, even though she's not home. You know, she's on the East Coast. So guess what? It's still home. I want you to know you're home too. If you have been in tune with Therapy Tuesdays over the past year and a half, 2 years, guess what? This is your home. This is a place for you to get balance, to get understanding. Because guess what? We love Jesus, right? My church says, I need Jesus and my therapist. Nothing's wrong with having a conversation. Actually, many times there's a lot of conversations that need to take place in the church that does not. So, hey, I'm here to break the mold, break the barrier. And tonight, we're going to talk about addictions. But first, let me introduce our speaker of the night. Like I said, this is home to her. Her name is Janae Ponder. She is a mom, a wife, an entrepreneur, a CEO. She is everything above. She's done had her own trials, tribulations, obstacles, trauma, and guess what? She's overcame it. But what does she do with this? She didn't become a hermit. She become one to exhort others, to bring it out, pull it out, and help them get through. So, y'all, as Miss Janae gets ready to come to the stage, I need you to put some hearts in the chat. Put where you're from. Hey, if you got some questions, put it in the chat. Here shortly, I'll have the number up. Say if you don't want to text it, just for confidentiality, that's fine. You can text our number, any question that you may have during this segment, and I'll ask the question during that time. So just to keep you covered. But I want you to get what you need. Don't just sit back and listen alone. But if you got something that's been on your heart, on your spirit, or you got a question about it, maybe for someone else, allow it to be exposed. Why? Because somebody else may have that same question. So y'all, welcome. I hope you enjoy yourself. You got your pen, you got your paper, you got your tools. As I bring Miss Janae to the stage, y'all give us some hand claps, some hearts, some love. Because guess what? She's been working all day too, but she loves us enough to come here one Tuesday out the month. Y'all, welcome Miss Janae Ponder.
All right. How you doing, family? I hope you guys are relaxing. Maybe you already got your dinner on, but I want you focused and locked in. Happy fall, y'all. It's getting closer to my favorite time of year. That's Christmas, so I'm getting more and more excited. Today's topic is a heavy one. I don't know anybody that hasn't been impacted by addiction of some form. So we're going to talk about the different types of addiction, our own addictions. The statistics are in, and one out of one of us have been addicted to something. And that's what we're going to talk about. So today's topic, have I been addicted? Absolutely, you have. And we're going to expose the nature, the signs, and talk about how to get free today. As always, let's have a good discussion. I need you to participate with me, but more importantly, take care of yourself. I may say something that triggers you. It is not my intent, but it is your responsibility to take care of yourself. So step away, get some cold water. Say, I can't do this one. I might have to watch this on recorded with some support, or I might not be able to finish this. But whatever you need, just take care of yourself. Today's objective, I hope that you all will gain insight into the complexities of addiction and identify some practical and very useful steps to breaking free from the cycles of addictive behaviors. And I said the word cycle. If you think about a cycle, it's a pattern, something that reoccurs. So let's simplify addiction right there. It is a reoccurring cycle that you are usually subconsciously a part of. So to get out of it, it's going to take some intention, some planning, some goals for you to counteract that cycle and have a counter reverse take place. But I'm going to give you some very practical tools to do that. I want to start off this discussion today with an analogy to kind of paint a picture for what addiction of any kind, no matter how intense or less intense it is. Addiction is like a river that starts as a gentle stream. At first, it feels refreshing and invigorating, providing a sense of escape and pleasure. However, as you follow the flow downstream, the stream begins to swell, transforming into a powerful current that pulls you in deeper. What once felt manageable turns into a force that drags you along, making it harder to navigate back to safety. The banks of the river, representing relationships, responsibilities, and health, start to erode, threatening to wash away the foundations of your life. To break free, you must recognize that you're caught in this current. It takes effort to swim against the flow and find your way back to solid ground. But with support and determination, you can create a new pathways, redirecting the course of your life toward calmer waters. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is a great analogy of what addiction is. Most people start out in whatever habit, behavior, substance, ways of thinking, ways of being, thinking, oh, this is a one time thing. This is manageable. I'm not going to do it. But then something happens that reinforces that cycle, and then things get out of hand. And that's why most people don't even recognize they're drowning or that they have an addiction until a level of awareness takes place. And we're going to talk about that. So it starts off really as a harmless habit. For some of them are harmless and some of them are harmful, but like most of us, if you do something that's harmful one time, we tell ourselves, oh, it won't be that bad. So it's still kind of harmless, or it registers as harmless in our mind. So what are some of your harmless habits? What are things that you do on a day-to-day basis that in your mind, it's not that big of a deal? And you can join in a chat. If you're not comfortable doing that, you could just think on it with me. What are some things that you find yourself doing perpetually that you say it's not that big of a deal, not that problematic? It may be talking on the phone, maybe on social media frequently. It might be laying in late or hitting the snooze button in the morning over and over. It could be drinking a little bit too much. It could be smoking something a little bit too much. What is your harmless habit, or in your mind that's harmless? And I'm going to just continue, but if you guys pop anything in the chat, I will pause for you guys. All right. So, emotional eating. Absolutely. I always say this: food don't hurt nobody. You can have a stressful, hard day and eat, and you don't have to fight it. It's good to you. It gets the reward system in your brain going. Yes, emotional eating. Um, Emotional anything. You put anywhere behind emotional, and it's going to always almost fit in the category. So I want to talk about today soft addictions versus a hard addiction. So what is a soft addiction? Many years ago, I read a book called There Must Be More Than This by Dr. Judith White, and I was introduced to soft addictions. It's not a concept that I coined, so I want to give credit to the author. And she had a quote in her book, and I want to share with you guys. It says, seemingly harmless habit, like a soft addiction is a seemingly harmless habit, like watching too much television, over shopping, surfing the internet or social media. Gossiping is a soft addiction. The things we overdo, but we don't realize it. It seems like normal behavior, but that's simply because everybody else is doing it too. So the dangers of a soft addiction is social environments actually reinforce them because everybody's doing it. You go on social media, you get likes, you get comments, you get shares. Believe it or not, our reward system in our brain is activated through dopamine. And what ends up happening is we like that feeling. So our brain and body seeks out those opportunities to get that same pleasure. But the challenge is our tolerance increases, and then we need more and more and more of it to feel better. That's why when we all started out with social media, we might have spent a couple of minutes on it when we first got introduced. And now a lot of people, if you look at your screen time, you probably spending hours now on social media because our tolerance is growing. That is a soft addiction. So what's the problem with soft addictions? We're not hurting nobody. Everybody else is doing it, but there are some very subtle and insidious problems with soft addiction. So the very first thing is it mutes your consciousness. It puts you in a mindless state, almost like a zombie. That's why when I talk to my clients and I'm assessing them, I normally will identify my living ghosts. These are people who are alive, but they're not in their body. Their brains are not activated. They're really not living from a conscious place and with intention, kind of just going along to get along. So it mutes your awareness, it numbs feelings, and it reduces your emotional intelligence. So you can't even articulate how you're feeling, where it's coming from. Furthermore, what to do about those feelings. So it numbs you, kind of like a state of disassociation. It takes you away from feeling. And the danger of being taken away from feeling is when you're not feeling, you don't have access to the solution, because feelings provide information that helps us move towards solutions and change. When you're numb, you don't feel burns. You kind of sit in it. It robs us of time. In her book, she shared that in a lifetime, and this book was written a while ago before social media and smartphones got hot. So at the time when the book was written, she said a human being would spend about 9 years on the telephone. I would imagine that has probably quadrupled since her writing that book. But we spend so much time doing things that bring us pleasure, but doesn't bring us wellness. So it's robbing us of time, and they are expensive. Always eating out or buying the next craze or funding the next soft addiction, it gets very expensive. So there are four categories of soft addictions. The very first one is activities. Obviously, like shopping, surfing the internet, things like that. And then avoidances or not doing anything. An example of that would be constantly waking up late. Are you a person that is always late? That could potentially be a soft addiction. It is a subconscious avoidance practice. Not showing up on time, sleeping in, um, actively and willfully just avoiding things, creating arguments so that way you can be excused from things, setting things up so you can be dismissed. Those are avoidances or not doing anything. Another category is moods and ways of being. An example of that is somebody who's very sarcastic. Do you know that you can get addicted to a way of being a difficult person? And you guys wonder why people are so persistently the way they are. There's a payoff to that. They actually find pleasure in that way. Their dopamine is getting activated in those processes, and we don't even realize it. Gossiping is a way of being. Some people feel so good from gossiping, and that's why they keep doing it. And then the very last category is edible and consumable things. So that's simple: eating food, ice cream, or overindulging in any food for that matter. So I want to talk about, if we're going to talk about soft addictions, and we got to talk about hard addictions, and then we got to talk about the difference. So what is the difference? So the soft addictions are more like compulsions or uh, fears. They're very motivated by anxieties. And when you think about hard addictions, it is a dependency that is heavily governed by your brain and body. It's your brain and body saying we need this to survive. Whereas on the soft addiction side, it is I need to do this thing to put a space between a perceived threat or perceived discomfort or something that I'm afraid of. So one is diminishing anxiety, while the other one is diminishing brain and body discomfort. The withdrawal symptoms are different. For soft addictions, if you withdraw from gossiping or from doing these things that get you going, you just might be a little bored or irritated. While on the hard addiction side, you might actually have physical pain, heart palpitations. You might be vomiting. You will have a bodily reaction to withdrawing. It is way more intense to withdraw hard addictions. That's why professional support is always recommended when you are withdrawing from any substance, aka hard addictions. The social reinforcement element. So, believe it or not, for soft addictions, the more social encounters and interactions you have, they may actually reinforce you to do it more. Whereas on the hard addiction side, there's a lot of isolation happening because of the shame. We do not like hard addicts in our inner circles. We shun them, we talk about them. While some people themselves are closeted and they are addicted to hard things, we don't usually socially embrace those who have hard addictions. And then coping mechanisms. The soft addictions are more so used to tolerate distressful moments. We are doing these things to tolerate moments and to survive distress, whereas the hard addictions are used to escape from pain. People want to stop living in pain or to survive the impact of trauma. And then the rationalization. Soft addictions are easily justifiable because everybody is doing them. Everybody's eating ice cream. Everybody's on social media. So there's no stop sign. Whereas the hard addictions are viewed as harmful, and you can't turn on the TV without seeing a don't do drugs or don't smoke or do. We are very vocal about our dissatisfaction with heart addictions. And then let's look at the impact on life, right? Um, soft addictions may interfere with your responsibilities in your relationships, but for the most part, you might be doing some of your soft addictions with people who you are in relationship with. They help reinforce it. That's how you guys have a good time. And on the other hand, heart addictions cause a significant disruption in your life. Most people can't maintain employment. They can't play their roles in their families. They are not functioning. They're not sleeping. The decision making part of their brain is impaired. They're just not doing very well. So understanding addiction. So I kind of introduced this to you a little bit, but let's start with brain chemistry. You get that feel good hormone, the reward system in your brain is activated, and boom, you feel pleasure. And then you connect and you fuse a behavior to that pleasure. Your brain says, ooh, doing this made me feel good. So then now your brain and body starts to seek that feeling out. And the only way it has registered getting to that feeling is that same behavior. And we're talking about heart addictions here. So whether that's inhalation, ingestion, however people are putting substances in their body. And then the next phase is tolerance. So now that fusion has happened where now your brain knows, if I want to feel this way, I got to do this behavior. And then it does that, but it wants to feel good more often. So now you have to use more frequently. And then you get dependent. And then you start to be in a position where you can have withdrawals. And then the withdrawals is where you start to have more of those intense symptoms. And that's where it's hard to cut those cravings. That's why, a lot of people say, well, I don't know why they can't just stop using. Why are they doing that? Why are they acting like that? It really isn't that easy, because what happens is a change in the brain occurs where the decision-making part of the brain actually goes offline. So people who are addicted to hard things really have a hard time deprogramming and getting their decision-making part of their brain to come back online. So what are some characteristics of soft addiction? So what's the difference? I just talked about hard addiction. So the brain chemistry still happens where the reward system is there, but withdrawal is way less severe. There's still a lot of social interaction and reinforcement. You're just coping through very hard moments or avoiding very hard tasks. Maybe you don't want to study for that test. Maybe you don't want to face your boss at work. So you're doing things to avoid that. It's easier to rationalize, and there is very little impact on daily life. And impact might look like you're not getting things done because you're spending too much time playing video games or doing other things. So it is impacting you, but it's not tremendous. So what are some signs of soft and hard addictions? One sign is excessive engagement in activities. If you are spending so much time doing things where you don't have time for yourself, for self-care, for your roles, for your responsibilities, that is a sign that you might be softly addicted. You are neglecting your responsibilities. I'm not going to pay my bills because I need to go shopping. Or I'm not going to do this. That might be a sign that you're softly addicted. Mood changes. If you can't get to the task that you're softly addicted to, you get very angry and irritable, and you're not yourself because you can't get to that thing, you might be softly addicted. Um, Social withdrawal, you're spending less and less time with the people who you used to socialize with. That is a sign that you're softly addicted. Justification of behavior as harmless or normal. It's okay if I eat ice cream and cookies and candy. I didn't eat all day. You start justifying some of those habits that really aren't any good for you. Difficulty cutting back. Whenever talks of eliminating or reducing that thing that you're softly addicted to happens, you're highly resistant, possibly even combative. Um, Escalation of activity where you're just doing it more and more and more and more and more. You just see it creeping up. And then feelings of guilt and regret. Like you're regretting all the time you spent doing that thing because now there's a natural consequence because you avoided your responsibilities. Maybe your lights and water got cut off because you used the money to go shopping instead of paying the bills. So you start to feel guilty about that. And then guilt, too much guilt can lead to other things. So now you have a secondary layer of, first layer of soft addiction that could lead into anxiety and depression. So what are some signs of hard addiction? Intense cravings. Remember, I said you need more and more of it, and the brain and body is now reaching for that. And it's way more intense than soft addictions. Tolerance. You need a lot more of it to feel like somebody, to feel happy. And you hit the bottom fast because now you need more to get to a higher level of euphoria. Withdrawal symptoms are intense. Like I said, vomiting, um, heart palpitations, maybe sometimes even change in temperature. Your vitals are off. Loss of control over use. You have no control over your urge or desire to use. You are now in that part of my analogy where it's highly rapid. You can't get your footing. You can't get grounded. The currents are beating you up and you need some support. Risky behaviors while using. If the decision making part of your brain is offline, that means you're not thinking logically. You're not making decisions with your safety in mind. That's why a lot of people who are addicted and are in this cycle, they're usually homeless, doing risky things to get more of it, taking advantage and manipulating people because they are not in a normal state of mind. Continued use despite negative consequences. They are homeless and they are continuing to use. Um, or they have lost their job and may even have lost their home, maybe even lost their families. And that's still not enough to help take away their cravings. Isolation from friends and family, they're usually very alone because they are ashamed. They don't want people to see this. And they're alone because a lot of people don't have enough information or skills to deal with this type of behavior. They're holding on to the idea of the person before the addiction took place, and they're having a hard time accepting the new version of this person now that they are addicted. And it is hard. It's very hard to watch someone you love slowly demise as a result of this process that they, in the moment, don't have control over. The very first thing I want to drop in everybody's spirit that's listening to me, whether you have dealt with addiction or you love someone who has, or maybe you're an acquaintance with someone who has, recovery is possible. It is possible. A lot of people are able to overcome soft and hard addictions. It takes a level of commitment. It takes a level of planning and strategy, and also building mastery. You have to take baby steps toward moving in the direction of recovery. It's not going to happen overnight, even though it feels like it. The addiction didn't happen overnight. So the unaddiction is not going to happen overnight. You have to have a level of patience and tolerance and kindness to get through this, whether you are supporting someone or you're even supporting yourself through this. So what does it take to break free? Awareness. I always say you cannot fix things that you're not looking at. The mechanic always looks under the hood to see what's wrong with the car before they fix it. A lot of times people don't realize that they are in an addictive cycle. They just believe life is hard, or they're just so focused on getting that reward system activated. They're not recognizing that they're in hot water. So if you are listening to me and the light bulb came on, wait a minute, I've been addicted to some things. That's the first step. It's nothing miraculous. You don't have to read a whole textbook. You don't have to lay on my couch. You don't have to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. It's just being aware, putting it into your consciousness. I'm out of control. And people have a hard time admitting that they are out of control. It usually, I don't know if you guys have had intimate encounters with people who are addicted, but they are usually a couple of months in before they say, I was out of control. I couldn't handle it. At the time, I didn't know it. Actually, after about maybe about 8 weeks, that's when you start hearing language like that. At least from my experience with working with people who are addicted. There needs to be a level of self-reflection. You have to concern yourself with self. How did I get here? What triggered me to get here? Was it childhood trauma? Was it because I'm stressed at work? If we're talking about soft addiction, was it because my role as a parent is overwhelming? What put me in a position where I needed to find a level of escapism through this process? And once you figure out the what, you can always figure out a plan to combat the what. That's why it's really important to have self-awareness. Build a support network. Addiction is one of those things. It's rare, but some people do it alone. But it is one of those things where support is one of the things that almost has to be in place, even if it's informal. And I'm going to say this: don't go to Lowe's for makeup. Don't go to environments that don't have the tools and skills to help you recover, to try to recover. Mom may not be a good person for you to go to, a sibling, a friend. You might need to go to an meeting, a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, an Overeating Anonymous meeting with strangers who you don't have that level of shame with, so that way you can be vulnerable. Professional help is really good. It's in a private setting, it's confidential. Nobody has to know what you're going through. Define your goals, and we got to make goals practical. I want to be clean. That's very broad. Let's be more specific. If you discover that it's childhood trauma that's causing you to escape through a soft addiction, then your goal might look like more specifically mending my relationship with my mother to reduce my stress around that relationship. That's very specific. And then let's get more specific there. I just made that up. Healthy communication skills with my mom, because that's why we don't have a good relationship. So if the communication gets better, the relationship will improve. My urge and desire to escape diminishes, and I'm not seeking out ways to get to pleasure, because now I find pleasure in communicating healthily. So that is what we call kind of trading the addictive behavior for something else. And being with a professional will help you get down to the nitty gritty of a practical, realistic baby step goal. So you're not living in a very broad goal, which actually could set you up for failure. If you say, I want to get clean, you're gonna be all over the place with that goal, and you might feel a little demotivated. Create a plan. Okay, if the goal is better communication, what is that going to look like? When are you going to start having these conversations? What are you going to talk about? Let's get very detailed here. And then with a detailed plan, you can hold yourself accountable. Your therapist or your support person can hold you accountable. You can't hold someone accountable when there's not a defined plan or goal in place. Find an alternative. One thing that helps with addiction is turning that reward system. So instead of being rewarded by the feeling that thing or substance gives you, now you find pleasure in being healthy. You find pleasure in rebuilding those relationships. You find pleasure in actually losing weight, because now you're not overeating ice cream, and you're just going to swap them out. And it really is a mindfulness thing. Through your commitment, you will start to think on your reasons why. Why do I need to get clean? What is my motivation? What is the payoff to being clean in this moment? Ooh, I'll have a better relationship with my children. So now I know the longer I stay clean, the closer I am to getting a mended relationship with my children. So every time I use, I think about, or I have the urge to use, I think about, well, if I keep using, I'm a long way away from mending those relationships. The less I use, the closer I am. So now I get excited when I think about myself getting closer and closer to my goal, and that starts to activate my reward system. And through therapy, a therapist or professional or some kind of coach can actually reinforce that. Learn about addiction. Don't stop here. If you listen to my voice, go get some books. If you want to learn more about it, YouTube, find some podcasts. There are so many resources at our fingertips. And instead of using it to mindlessly surf, you can use it in a mindful way to actually edify yourself and to grow. Stay informed. Understand what's happening. Track your progress. You need to celebrate yourself, but you're not going to celebrate if you don't see progress. You're not going to see it if you're not tracking it. You can do it through a journal. You can, maybe every time you have a day of not indulging in an activity or a substance, you can put a smiley face down. And maybe when you get to 10, you announce it to people and you do something nice for yourself. You just don't want to reward yourself for the same behavior that you're trying to stop doing. Commitment. Be committed. Allow nothing to come between you and your goal of overcoming this addiction. Commitment. It's a mind thing. Plan B is to make plan A work, and nothing will stop you. Remind yourself of your why, which is what I talked about. Now, I put the word support down here. The researchers out there, the number one thing that needs to be in place for recovery to happen is support. You cannot do it by yourself. Yes, your decisions and the process happen without anyone being involved. And sometimes it is, because we do have enablers. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But you need support. Be kind to yourself. Not only do you need to be kind to yourself if you are an addicted person or if you're caught up in a soft addiction cycle, but you need to be kind to others who are in addiction. It is so easy to mistreat people who are involved in activities that irritate you. It's very easy. Take this away. They're not doing it on purpose. No one wakes up in the morning and say, I want to be addicted. Please make me addicted. Be kind. If you can't handle it, encourage them to get help from somebody who can. And know your limits. And with those limits, set boundaries. So how can you support a loved one who might be addicted? The very first thing you can do is educate yourself. Learn about the addiction cycle. Communicate openly. I have relatives and I have loved ones who unfortunately are not here with us who have had addiction issues. And yeah, we got to start talking about the problems, not around the problems. Hey, have you used today? When was the last time you used? Where are you getting the money to use? I have asked some very direct questions to the people that I love. How can I help you? No, I can't give you money, but I can talk on the phone with you. No, I'm not going to support you doing that, but I'm here for you if you need to call me. You gotta have some real conversations and stop beating around the bush. Long gone are the days where we know we have people we love who are addicted and we just act like something wrong with them, or we overlook it because it's too intense for us to deal with. Again, if you can't handle it, encourage them to see or talk to someone who can. Be patient with them. It is not easy being addicted. We don't want to enable and excuse and pardon, but we certainly don't want to dehumanize and demean and ostracize. Practice self-care for yourself. It is hard. It is a sad process to watch. And if you're not careful, you'll start to internalize some of it and could potentially set yourself up for mental unwellness. So take good care of yourself if you are in close proximity to someone who has a heart addiction. Offer support, not enabling. Sometimes we have codependency and people-pleasing tendencies that enables people. The beautiful thing about the addiction recovery process is it requires the opposite of enabling. We need people to use their abilities. That's the whole reason why the addiction process takes a hold of them. Their abilities and decision-making skills are deactivated. When we enable people, we deactivate their ability to use their abilities. So we need to encourage people to get help. not drive them and make them and give ultimatums, not give money because we don't want to see them struggling. We need to teach them how to use their strengths and gifts to get themselves out of a hole and be loving and kind in the process. Enabling is not a form of love in the sense that it moves toward recovery. It actually is counterintuitive to the recovery process. And while it may be coming out of an act of love, it doesn't show up as love because most people who are heavily enabled usually do not recover. Celebrate progress. And don't just celebrate them in the end when they're clean. When you see them going to AA meetings, acknowledge that. When you see them asking for help, say, hey, I noticed you asked for help and I see how hard you're working. I want you to know how proud of you I am. People need that type of encouragement throughout the process. Join support groups. You have Al Anon, you have Teen Al Anon. Those are for relatives or people who are in close proximity to people who have heart addictions. Be prepared for relapse. People who are living with addiction most likely will relapse. The statistics are about 40 to 60% of people will relapse. So be prepared for a relapse. Relapse does not mean that they failed. Relapse is a part of the recovery process. In fact, we try not to call it a relapse. We call it just a lapse. If I have a lapse in being clean, that urge overtook, and then they will get there. And you have to see it as not a failure, but not yet. They haven't gotten there quite yet, but they are chipping away at it. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That is the same thing with recovery. Encourage healthy activities. Exercise, eating healthy. In fact, the healthier they are, the healthier their mind is. And the strength of mind is what's going to help them overcome those cravings. So, how can you support yourself if you have a soft addiction? Because some people do reach out to therapy for soft addictions, but some people are perfectly fine self-helping. So, acknowledge your behaviors, acknowledge those things, those ways of being, those activities through eating. Acknowledge the behaviors and tendencies that you have that you are stuck doing and you can't quite stop. Hold yourself accountable. Recognize what part of the problem is you. If you are rationalizing these behaviors and not really facing them, you're only going to give them permission to keep happening. Set some clear goals. If you want to stop eating ice cream, set a goal to say, I'm not going to eat more than a few tablespoons of ice cream in the evening. So now you're not overindulging, you're not depriving yourself, but you got a clear goal. A certain amount a day. You might even change the kind of ice cream you buy. You might get sugar-free or something to just scratch your itch, but you have a clear plan in place to move in a better direction. Identify your triggers. What is stressing you? It's not what you're eating, but what is eating you? What is eating you up that you're not addressing? If you can't identify that, find a therapist. Limit your access to the things. Turn off the Wi-Fi if it's something on the internet. I remember one time when I was trying to get off social media because I just didn't feel like it was benefiting me at the time. I actually deactivated or I took the apps off of my phone without deactivating. Create a barrier between you and the access to the thing. Find alternatives. So again, instead of eating regular ice cream, get the sugar-free. Or instead of zoning out on the phone, maybe you might start reading books. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is thought awareness. It is directing your thoughts toward an intended outcome. So get into your body, get into your mind, and start to think from a conscious perspective. Learn how to use wisdom to guide your decisions instead of just your feelings. And that can happen, that can be strengthened through prayer, meditation, anything where you're learning to quiet your mind and adjust it, even when you have a lot of stimuli around you. Create a routine. That's it. For me personally, routines are key. Waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time, creating a lunch break at the same time. You guys, we underestimate the power of a schedule. Schedules don't just exist for us to be more productive, but they exist to hold us accountable and to make sure all of the things that we value get the attention that it deserves. So stick to your routine. Engage in healthy activities. Not activities that feel good or pleasurable activities, but healthy. Well, what is a healthy activity? It is an activity that moves you closer to wellness. You're actually better after you participate. You don't feel better. And that's the problem. We avoid healthy things because sometimes they don't feel good, but they are good. Seek support, track your progress, and reward yourself for the milestones. So, as always, I have true and false to try to check your knowledge and check for understanding. So, my very first statement, and if you're on with me, just put a T in the comments if it's true or an F in the comments if it's false. The first one, soft addictions typically involve behaviors that are socially accepted and less disruptive to daily life. Is that true or false? That is true. They are socially accepted and they do not disrupt our lives. The next one, hard addictions often result in intense withdrawal symptoms when the substance is not used. That is true. Yes. Hard addictions have some really intense withdrawal reactions. Actually, alcohol is one of the hardest substances to withdraw from, and many people, unfortunately, actually pass away from alcohol withdrawal. That's why it's really important to be under medical watch or in a have medically assisted detoxing when it comes to alcohol in particular. The third one, social support can play a significant role in recovery from both soft and hard addictions. Is that true or false? I already see some truths coming in. That is true. Social support can play a significant role in recovery. Don't underestimate the power of somebody helping you through those choppy, difficult waters. Um, Soft addictions do not have any negative impact on relationships or responsibilities. Is that true or false? That is false. Soft addictions do have negative impact on relationships and responsibilities. Oftentimes, we're not nurturing relationships because we're too busy doing those things that we're softly addicted to. Oftentimes, we are neglecting our responsibilities because we're too busy focusing on those soft addictions. The next one, hard addictions are usually characterized by a physical dependence on a substance. Is that true or false? That is true. Remember, I said the heart addictions, there is a brain and body drive toward the substance. So it's a physical dependency. Your body needs this substance to function. There is now an element where if it doesn't have the substance to function, there will be a physiological response. It could be heart palpitations, a change in your vitals. It could be vomiting. It could be sweats. It could be hot flashes, cold flashes. But your body will respond to not having this thing that it now depends on for homeostasis or balance. Identifying triggers can help manage both soft and hard addictions effectively. Is that true or false? That is true. Know your triggers. Know what is driving you to do these things or want to indulge in these things. Thank you guys for your attention. I hope that you learned something. I hope you feel empowered to support someone you love and know through addiction. I hope that you are empowered to help yourself. As always, I want to talk about some of my products. The very first product I'm going to talk about is my Girl Dad coloring book, a coloring book for Black dads and daughters. If you know someone who needs an activity to do with their daughters, they need some inspiration of things they can do with their daughter through the illustrations, go ahead and order. It's on Amazon. Christmas is around the corner. My other coloring book is for Black women. It is Fearless Queens. In this book, I have affirmations and beautiful illustrations to empower women to overcome those fears that we often hide. This book was inspired by my own fears related to motherhood, just my overall professional journey. That's also on Amazon. Scan the QR code. And then my gift to Black therapists. You guys know I'm very passionate about BIPOC clinicians. That's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And I have a coloring book called My Therapist is Black. If you know someone who is a therapist who is Black, this book is going to encourage them to take care of themselves, embrace what it means to be a Black therapist. Just my gift to Black therapists. And the very last book I want to share is 100 Bold Affirmations to Calm Your Fears. It is a self-help affirmation book that could take up to 2 years to get through. It was not designed to be a quick read. It's just giving you those bold affirmations to really start to deconstruct the fears that are debilitating you. As always, I leave you with resources. 988 is the new mental health crisis hotline. If you're dealing with a mental health related crisis, instead of dialing 911, you dial 988. Of course, 911 is there. If you don't want to talk to a person, you're not quite there. If you are in a tough situation, you can text home to 741-741. You could get support. The National Suicide Hotline is still activated. It's 1-800-799-7233. And then there is Psychology Today. You can find yourself a therapist. You put in your insurance, your zip code, the issue you're dealing with. You can even narrow it down to the race and sex of the therapist you prefer. And a list of therapists will pop right up in your area. You can vet them, decide what works best for you. And as always, we're going to end with some questions, thoughts, feedback, discussions, and thank you for your attention.
All right. Well, I got a few questions for you. Ooh.
Okay.
Oh, they were coming in too. All right. So the first question I got is, how do I deal with a partner that has a soft addiction but won't admit to it?
The only thing we can do is control the controllables, encourage toward the thing. Because what's going to happen is if you keep pressing it, eventually you're going to get burnt out and start to resent them. And then also, when I say control the controllables, you can encourage them toward that. Then you got to take a step back to figure out how much can you tolerate? What are your limits in this process? When will you get to the point where you say, I can't be in this space anymore? And that's a hard discussion to have. Sometimes we want people to change so badly, but in order for us to be well, we need to change, and sometimes in a drastic way.
Okay. How do I support myself with supporting my child who has, as you say, lapsed many a times over because it gets frustrating and devastating as a parent?
Support. Get you a therapist. Get in some of those Al-Anon groups and really understand addiction, because your understanding will keep you. It will keep you from losing your mind. And I'm going to acknowledge just how difficult it is to watch a child go through the addiction process. Like I said, I have relatives, and addiction hits very close to me. So it's hard. Let me acknowledge that. This is not easy. And I don't want to make it seem like just because I'm saying what to do, that makes it any easier. I want to acknowledge the pain that it is to be in that. And you're not alone. There are a lot of moms out there that are dealing with what you're dealing with, or if it's a dad, because I don't know the sex of the person who wrote that. There are a lot of parents and relatives who are dealing with the same pain. So sometimes being in an environment where other people are going through what you're going through, it normalizes it, and normalizing it for you may alleviate your stress just a little bit. But radically accept that about 40 to 60% of people in recovery will relapse. It is a part of the recovery process. Recovery doesn't mean 100% perfection. Recovery means I acknowledge I have the problem and I am on a journey toward understanding how to not have this problem. And there's a lot of learning, a lot of setbacks, a lot of triggers, a lot of undoing that's going to take place. And it doesn't mean that your child is failing. It just means they're on a journey, and you stay on that journey with them. When they do relapse, keep encouraging them. My relative that relapsed, I let this relative know all the time how much I love them. I remind them that I'm here, and I remind them that they can do it. I also remind this relative that how hard it is for other people to watch them. Because sometimes the addict gets frustrated because of how frustrated people are getting at them for relapsing, because they're not trying to relapse. And they do want support, but they don't want to be shamed. They don't want to be humiliated. So just be encouraging and get support and accept that relapse is a part of the journey. I hope I help you.
Okay, another question says, how did you deal with your relatives that were addicted?
I kind of just answered it. Love and kindness. I am not the hero. I don't swoop in. I don't overcommit. I don't overpromise. But they know if they call me, I'm going to treat them like human beings. I humanize them. That's the very thing that I do. I put the human back in them. I try not to just talk about the addiction. I talk about their goals, what you got going on. I'm talking about employment. Okay, have you applied for this job? What's your resume looking like? Again, I'm not applying for them. I'm not putting them on my back and enabling them, but I am asking them about the things that I know that are going to help them on their journey, the things they need. Sometimes I talk about the barriers. Well, why didn't you take that job? Or why didn't this happen? And then I also hold them accountable. There's a balance between confrontation and compassion. It's called irreverence. I love them, but I also hold them accountable. Okay, now you made this decision, and this decision is going to take you 10 steps back from your goal. I remind them of their why. It's going to take you 10 steps back if you keep making that choice. When you're here, remember you can't blame anybody. And sometimes I also acknowledge when that decision-making part has gone offline and they're just doing some very irrational things. I don't take that personal. It's not because they want to do it on purpose. It's a part of the process. So again, I hope I've said something that's helping somebody right now.
All right. And that was a two-part question because it was how do you handle it? But then the second part of that question was how do you deal with those relatives that have hurt you personally?
It's been a journey. And I'm not the same Janae I was when I first got introduced to relatives who are addicted. Let me tell you, I'll be very transparent. I was so resentful toward addiction. As a therapist, I said, I'm never going to see a client with addiction. That's how bad it hurt me and it bothered me. I said, you know what? I'll do everything else but addiction. I'm never doing it. And through learning and growing, I have matured around that. I'm able to tolerate it. I educated myself. I understand that they're not doing it on purpose. I understand that it's a neurological and hormonal process. I recognize that the things that it takes to move to a recovery was not the way that I was handling it. And I like to be effective. So I was willing to adjust my strategy to be effective, even though it was really hard. And I'll tell you what paid off for me. Seeing some of my relatives get better because I changed my strategy. And better doesn't mean they get clean. Better means they're trying harder, making a better effort. And now I'm at a place now. I now treat people with addiction. I don't turn away from it. I have grown around it. I have evolved when it comes to dealing with people who have substance or addiction issues.
Okay. The next question, I think this question will go for me, but I want your insight too. It says, how can you explain addiction in a spiritual sense?
Ooh, how can you explain addiction in a spiritual sense? You know, the mind is a very sensitive thing. And I think because addiction is a subconscious process, and I know the word says, keep your mind stayed on God, right? I think it's all distraction. When we don't find ourselves grounded in something bigger than us, we will find ourselves floating in anything. And that anything could be addiction. It could be unhealthy relationships. It could be almost anything that's not of God. And I think that being very clear about there are so many biblical things that we can pull up that would validate why addiction is not of God. So many things. We could talk about the body being a temple. We could talk about trusting God. We could talk about a whole bunch of things that could validate why addiction isn't good. That's why we got to keep the word in our lives. Stay grounded in God's word. Stay grounded in some kind of church family. Find a church home. Find you a pastor. Find you somebody who will hold you accountable to studying the word. Have a Bible study, because when you get the word in you, you are conscious. You are not a living ghost, as I said in my presentation. You are walking with a purpose. You have a purpose-driven life. And not saying that people who are in the church who have a purpose-driven life don't backslide or have weaker moments. We all have those, but they are less likely to happen, and you are going to bounce back quicker when you are grounded.
And I just add, that was excellent. Look, you said it all. I really don't need to say that. But there's a verse, James 5:16. It says, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. So one thing for me, when I understood that, broke it down, your faults in the Greek means error, your mishaps. And sometimes when the first thing about addiction is being able to expose it. You can't get help. You can't get free. You can't get healed from something that you won't expose. The devil, the enemy, sometimes ourselves, the things that we keep in the dark, we can never overcome. And so part of that addiction is saying, you know what? Hey, I got a problem with this, whatever it may be. All of us have had some errors in our life that, once we acknowledge it, it was easier to get free than keeping the shame. And, one thing about freeing yourself from that shame is understanding you're not the only one. I think a lot of times society has deemed us that when we have an issue, that we're the only one with that issue and you're not. And so I think, and I believe that if you can confess, just like being saved, you have to confess it. You have to say it out loud. When you allow that thing to come out of you and not take control of you, you take power over it. Because when you're speaking it out to someone that you can trust and that's willing to help you and be on your side, guess what? Now you're empowering yourself instead of allowing that thing to have power over you. And so, have somebody that you can talk to. Have that therapist, that accountability partner, somebody that you can be honest with and can be honest with you. Our last question, if nobody has any more in the chat, this will be our last one for tonight. It says, I have been in recovery for 3 years. However, the want for my addiction and the urges come constantly. Is there any tips that you can give me to help with the urges when they come? Because it's overwhelming when it happens.
First thing I want to acknowledge is your strength of mind to not succumb to your urges in 3 years. That's amazing. That's good progress. That means something you're doing is working. It may not feel the best, but something you're doing is working. You can Google, there's something called urge surfing. And I think that's what you're doing already. And the theory behind urge surfing is the longer I learn to ride the wave, the less intense it will feel. So continue to ride the wave, but I would say use some distress tolerance skills. Distress tolerance skills are skills that teach you or help you to survive the moment. It says you're going to have distressing moments. Riding those urges are distressful for you. So you need to have a plan in place. Create a card and put distress tolerance skills to use when I have an urge. Find little things that are opposite of what those urges do for you. And I don't know what your little things are, but you might want to do some homework and research with yourself. You might want to do some little aromatherapy. What scents, if you smell them, give you calm and distract your mind from trying to reach toward that thing? It might be mint. It could be eucalyptus. It could be lavender. Aromatherapy is very helpful. Hot and cold also helps to regulate your body. So a cool drink of water, putting ice on your neck, or a cool rag on your forehead. Warm might be the thing. Put a hot water bottle on your chest, tummy, or back, or take a real hot shower. You need something to kind of shock your nervous system. And what happens when we shock our nervous system is the brain is no longer thinking of that thing. It is now like, wait a minute, why are you shocking me? Why is this so cold, or why is this so hot? and it gives you a little relief from reaching toward that thing. Physical activity is really good because you get your feel good hormones going through exercise. You get a little bit of dopamine going, serotonin. Sunlight is good. Spend time in the sun. Go to the beach, go outside, spend time in nature. I don't know what things are going to do it for you, but spend some good time with yourself and come up with a little protocol. And this is why mindfulness is important, because if you're mindful, you will say, "Ooh, I'm having an urge. It's time for me to activate my protocol or my plan for when I'm having these urges." You should always have your aromatherapy on hand in a pocket, in a wallet, in a purse. It needs to be accessible. The urge doesn't care about where you're at, so you got to always be prepared. My last recommendation is making sure that once you identify what works for you, practice it often. You may create a time in your day where you say, "You know what, I'm going to practice my urge protocol." Smell your scent. You might jog in place or do your exercises. The reason why you want to practice these things, it's easier to activate something that you already have in daily practice. If you never activate your protocol and then think you're going to remember it when you get an urge, you will not, because you're going to be so overwhelmed by that urge. I hope that I said something that you feel like it's practical enough for you to actually go out there and try.
And we just got one last question. I want to ask it because it's pretty important to me, I believe. How do you handle and deal with generational addiction?
Woo. Let me think on that. How do you handle generational addiction? I think strategy, right? Knowing the realities of what it takes to create the opposite of that. It takes education. It takes knowing that being aware that that's happening. It takes being intentional and creating a lifestyle where I can minimize falling into those same traps. It takes accountability. I can recognize that I have soft addictions and why I'm doing it. Um, it just, you have to play your role in your recovery process. You can't just say I want generational addiction to stop, and that it's just going to happen because you say that. What work are you putting in to make sure it stops? Are you in therapy? Have you had a family meeting to talk about this thing that's happening, but maybe other people aren't dealing with it? Have you set some boundaries? Are you hanging out in the same places with the same people that your family who was addicted doing? How have you changed up your lifestyle? What are your healthy strategies? Those types of things. That's the best advice I can have for you. I know my plan B is to make plan A work, and plan A is to be healthy and be whole. So I will do whatever it takes to be healthy and whole. I'm not perfect at it. Lord knows some days I fall off, but I am trying, and I give myself effort for trying. So if you're like me and you are trying, don't strive for perfection. Give yourself, I guess, praise just because you're trying. Just try. All you got to do is try. We underestimate a good try. Just try to create the opposite effect of what generational addiction has been in your life, and you're already on the right path.
Well, thank you for that. And the only thing I added that, pray, talk to God about it. The fact that you know that there's a generational addiction, guess what? You're a step ahead. Sometimes we don't know. So when you do know or you find out, you can also know how to handle it, or look at your parents or whoever it was that was addicted in your family to see, okay, what allowed them or what happened to make them spiral or to go on that path of addiction, and try to, like Janae said, avoid those things, those environments and those things, because you already kind of got a head start knowing that there's a generational addiction. So just keep pressing forward and know, as she said, recovery is possible. It can happen, and you will make it as long as you stick to it. So y'all, as always, we appreciate you. If you want to reach out to Janae or her practice, LifeSpark Counseling, you can go to lifesparkcounseling.com or text 386-400-3100. Say you had a question tonight that you didn't get out, or you're just not comfortable answering it right now. If you text that number, she will get back with you at her earliest convenience. Now, y'all, she's busy. So please give her grace, but she will respond to you. So as always, y'all, if you can, just Give Janae some love. If you got something out of tonight, if there's a tool that you can put in your toolbox to help somebody else, or just to continue going forward, put some hearts, a hand clap, or say, you know what, I needed that. I know somebody that needed that. Share it, like it, send it to somebody, because this is to help us build each other. We cannot do it alone. The Bible says that we are many members to one body. So guess what? This is part of that. This is part of building the body. This is part of building our community. This is part of restoration, giving you information and tools so that you can grow higher and get further, but also overcome those cycles and overcome and conquer the things of your life that maybe at times have had you in dark places. So Janae, we thank you. We appreciate you for always giving us valuable information.
My pleasure.
So y'all, as we conclude this segment, thank you for joining, as well as I gotta add, thank y'all for all those that sent me some birthday love this past week. It was amazing, nothing short of great. So I just thank you for all the birthday love, the texts, the calls, the cash apps. You all have been a blessing, and I appreciate you. Just wanted to acknowledge that. But at this time, if you want to sow into Therapy Tuesdays, at this time, you can give I can never leave this line, this platform, without saying a prayer, because a lot of people are facing addiction. A lot of people are going through. And so I always want to be accountable and cognizant to that of, hey, what you may be going through. So at this time, I just want to pray. Father, I just thank for all those that were online, all those watching the replay, all those that may have had something that they got an answer to tonight. But Father, I just ask whatever that they're fighting, whatever that they're going through, whether it be a family member, a child, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a sister, a friend, Father, even just an associate, I just ask that you cover them, use them as a beacon of light to encourage, to push, and to help somebody be transformed. But Father, we just ask that you cover each and every individual under the sound of my voice. Father, cover them mentally, physically, and emotionally. Father, cover their spirit, cover their heart. Father, those that have been hurt by addiction, those that have been broken by addiction, Father, we just thank you that you will send healing in their direction. In Jesus Christ's mighty name, amen, amen, amen. We love you. We love you. I will see you all on Thursday for our Digging Deeper segment. I love you. God bless. Thank you for joining our Therapy Tuesday tonight. God bless you.